Let's come back home to Australia. It was a historic day in Victoria. Don't take my word for it. Listen to the Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allan. Sorry, we didn't mean to show you that. That's Jacinta Allan's inner thoughts during the press conference. Here's Jacinta Allan herself speaking at today's press conference.
Today is an historic day for our state, for our strong Victorian community. And it's historic because we're about to embark on treaty negotiations that will make our strong state even stronger, even fairer, even more equal for all Victorians.
If you want to know why Victoria is embarking on a treaty, consider the fact she used the word historic 3 times in 6 seconds in that press conference. This is all about Jacinta Allan having her moment in history, the same as the apology was all about Kevin Rudd's moment in history, the same as the Voice was all about Anthony Albanese trying to etch his name in the history books. Jacinta Allan goes on in this press conference trying to explain why a treaty is so necessary for the state of Victoria. She talked on and on. None of it made much sense. Here's a little bit more of what she said.
We know that we need to get better outcomes, and we know the outcomes right now are not fair. They're not equal because throughout history, since colonisation, First Peoples in this state have been excluded from opportunity.
So when you boiled it all down, Liz and Caleb, I came up with 3 things because I was trying to understand, why does Victoria need a treaty? The number one thing she said is because we need to listen, because we get better outcomes when we listen. Now, I didn't know that you're unable to listen without a treaty first being in place. And wasn't that the whole argument with the Voice that was rejected by 54% of Victorians? Her second argument was that, and I love it when politicians say, we know that, and then they say something, but they never give any evidence as to how we know. They just say,
and also, who's we?
That.
Who's we?
Exactly.
We who are pushing my narrative know that.
So she says, we know that overseas treaty has produced better outcomes. Well, you know, you can fly, 3 hours across the ditch to New Zealand and see how the outcomes are going there. But her big argument seemed to be that we need equality. I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure we have equality in Victoria as we do around the rest of the country, but it's equality of outcomes, particularly education, health, incarceration rates and lifespans. And this is where it doesn't matter whether it's the Voice, the treaty or whatever you do, if you choose to live a lifestyle that embraces Indigenous culture, you can't then expect Western culture outcomes. They're 2 different things. And so no matter what government does, you're always going to end up with this gap. You're going to end up with division in the community because this whole treaty process, one of the other things I really hate about it, it's secret. She said that it's got to be done behind closed doors because it's got to be done in a culturally safe space. Well, what about the safety of Victorian taxpayers whose money will be used to pay for whatever's involved in this treaty? But she did assure Victorians, we will keep you updated. I'm not sure they would take much solace from that.
I think she's forgotten who works for who.
The whole thing is just a joke, but it's going to be historic. It's going to be historic.
You point out the example of New Zealand, right? Fly 3 hours over the Dutch and go and see how the treaty's going. The Treaty of Waitangi was signed in 1840, right? So it's been there for a very long time. And we can see exactly how that's going today. Because we're told in Victoria and everywhere else that a treaty will solve the problems. Because once we have the treaty, we've made good with the Indigenous people of Australia or Victoria or New South Wales or South Australia or Western Australia or wherever it might be that this treaty is signed. And after that, we've all made good with each other and then we can all move on. Well, they signed the Treaty of Waitangi in 1840 in New Zealand. And right now, there are motions coming up before Parliament, which is, you would have seen the video of the haka being performed in Parliament, etc., where the Indigenous people of New Zealand, the Maoris, want more rights. So it doesn't matter. You can go through the treaty process and say that we've now made good, made an agreement about who's got whose land and what, and we all say it's all fine now and we're all reconciled. That ain't the end of it. And that's the problem, especially when it's a secretive process, as the one that is going on in Victoria, because A, you don't know what's going to come out of this process right now, but you don't know what's going to come out of it further down the line. I mean, there will be little Easter eggs left all through this thing that could cause trouble down the road. You cannot tell me that signing a treaty is going to fix anything. It just emboldens people. It says, well, we're open to business here to give you whatever the hell you want. Once you've got the treaty, that's not going to be the end of the story.
And how many times have we been told this, right? It was the vote. They got the vote, as they should, of course. Then it was sorry day. Now we've made good. Now we've made good. National sorry day, that is. Then it was the voice. We need the voice, and that is going to make good. That is going to make good. Meanwhile, nearly every single state in the country was drawing up some form of a treaty. Queensland famously says they're going to make a treaty with every single tribe. How do you think you're going to manage that? There's well over 100, closer to 150 different Queenslander tribes in the state. So if anything, Victoria's done a better job here, just going, we'll just have one treaty for the state, and that is that. But firstly, how dare our government do this kind of thing funded by the taxpayer secretly? So you don't know how much this is going to cost. She's taken nothing off the table. We're hearing they even want a say in what kids are going to be taught in school going forward. Like, that's already not absolutely soaked in white guilt from a young age. Do us a favour. But also what you were saying earlier, Mac, this gets my goat every single time, because when we talk about closing the gap, it doesn't have to do with opportunity. We have had equal opportunity in this country for a very, very long time. But what it is saying is, you guys, until you look like us, until your education outcomes are like ours, until your lifestyle reflects the healthcare outcomes that we want to see in your community, it is simply, what if they just don't want to live like us? Not all of them, but some are like opting out, saying, no, I don't want to graduate school, spend years in uni, rack up a HECS debt, spend the rest of my life at a desk looking into a computer in a soulless office under fluorescent lights while the taxman takes a heap of my earnings. Maybe they don't want that. Maybe they don't want that. And something else that isn't being addressed is, why would you choose that when the welfare state has been so robust for so long? What we have taught our own Indigenous communities is, you don't have to go to work. You don't have to live like us. And why would they? When they're like, well, hang on, my dad and his dad, they've never gone to work. The taxpayer purse looks after us, and that's good enough for me. Thank you very much. It has become their way of life. Not all of them, but for a large proportion of several of the Indigenous communities. And then we wonder why they don't want to change.
Just look after people based on their need, not on their race. So I was in Melbourne last weekend. Special shout out to Andre from Cocoa Moon at Warrandyte Cafe. Watches the late debate every single night.
And you're going to get a free coffee next time you go there.
Counting on it, absolutely. But I got on Skybus. I know you've been on Skybus as well. You arrive at the airport and then you get this acknowledgement of country, and then they say, and a reminder, this land has never been ceded. I'm just wondering if this treaty goes through, and they're looking for, various little things, little trinkets. Is that going to be the ceding of land?
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
I wouldn't have thought so.
And it also goes on the Skybus about how it's the land we know as Melbourne and the land we know as Australia, as though it may not actually be so. But it's a very good point you raise, Liz, about the fact that all of this stuff, whether it's treaty or the voice or any other way in which the left sort of deals with Indigenous affairs, is that they love to complain about the awful things the white man has done, but then their responses to it are so often tainted by white man's paternalism in terms of the way that they think other people should behave. You can't have it both ways. But as long as we feel warm and fuzzy inside, that's what matters the most, eh?